So what that means is don't say anything you don't want to go on the record, even to your friends, because we will all know. So we have Carla from Mexico City.
Fantastic.
We have Marianne from Collingwood. We have Duncan from Collingwood. First Presbyterian Church from Collingwood.
There's
Andrea from the town of Blue Mountains. Go ahead.
And Paula Hope from the town of Blue Mountains.
Hello, everyone.
Hi there. Shirley Cavini from Meaford. And Kathleen Caswell from Wasaga.
Hi.
Looking like a great group.
Hello.
Lots of folks from Collingwood. Michelle Baker. Susan Nicholson.
Hi, Sue.
Susan Cook from Blue Mountains. Kate Russell from Grey Highlands. So again, the suggestion to open your chat if you're just coming in, say who you are and where you're from. You can use, if you're on a PC, the top right-hand corner of your screen. You can toggle from speaker view to gallery view. It's really nice to be able to see everyone, but at some point you may also want the speaker view. If you're on an Apple a device, they're down below somewhere.
I just wanted to welcome everyone and to thank my co-hosts, Marilyn Struthers, who has been welcoming you in, and Brandon Houston from the Collingwood Foundry. And my name is Rosalind Morrison, and I am the chair of the Institute of South Georgian Bay. We've still got people coming in, so we'll just give 1 or 2 more minutes.
And while we've got that 1 or 2 minutes going, find your mute button, usually in the bottom left-hand corner, and do keep yourself on mute if you would. We've had some sensational moments of barking dogs, breaking china, that sort of thing. So just keep yourself on mute. Otherwise, I have, and Brandon and I both have the magic mute button. We'll do it for you.
And while we're waiting for a few more people to come in, I did want to begin with an evolving acknowledgement. I think as we're learning our way through sustainability, it's important for us to realize that people have been walking on our lands for thousands of years, and we would like to acknowledge that the land we're gathered on today is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabeg Nation. We'd also like to acknowledge the enduring presence of the Indigenous peoples of this region, specifically the Chippewa Tri-Council First Nations, comprised of the Beausoleil First Nation, the Chippewas of Rama, and the Chippewas of Georgina Island. We also want to acknowledge the Moose Deer Point First Nation, the Wattamotoks, the Georgian Bay and Moon River Métis councils in this region. And it should also be noted that the Wendat and the Haudenosaunee nations have also walked this territory over time. This is a home of a diverse range of Indigenous peoples whom we recognize as contemporary stewards of the land and vital contributors to our society, and we walk together in gratitude. I'm going to tell you a little bit about how the gathering will unfold. And first of all, want to share with you the vision of the Institute. The Institute is a volunteer-run, not-for-profit organization. And we believe in the power of harnessing people and this beautiful place we call Southern Georgian Bay to grow social and economic prosperity and be the smartest, greenest, healthiest, and most caring region in Ontario. The Institute is really a connector of people, and part of the joy of doing that is meeting all kinds of people across the region who are extremely talented and who have volunteered their time to be on our design team for this series called Our Sustainable Future, Get Inspired, Get Informed, and Get to Work. I'd like to highlight again my co-hosts, Marilyn Struthers and Brandon Houston, who will be facilitating. We have co-chairs joining us, Andrew Palmer, Julie Scarcella, and Adam Thackeray. And we also have Catherine Daw, Yvonne Hamlin, and June Porter. Thank you so much. We could not do this without your help. The Our Sustainable Future series is 7 parts. And for those of you who weren't able to join us for the launch on February 10th, we had a wonderful presentation by 4 speakers, including our Lieutenant Governor of Ontario, Elizabeth Dowdeswell. Her insights and remarks can be found along with the recording of February 10th on our website at www.tisgb.com. And this whole series can be participated in one by one, or you can join all 7 because the narrative builds over time. In February, we heard, well, why build a case for a sustainable future? Today, we're going to hear from CAOs talking about pressing issues, potential alignments, and innovative solutions to the issues that we're all facing. In April, we'll be hearing from leaders who are actually building the next economy. And I think it's important as we move through the pandemic that we build a much better future through the pandemic and beyond it. There'll be lots of great ideas that we can learn from in April. In May, we would like to invite the mayors from across the region to share with us the assets that we already have in place and perhaps some of the funding challenges to meet our pressing needs. And in June, we'd like to begin really unpacking the Sustainable Development Goal 11, which is sustainable cities and communities. And certainly one of those topics will be proactive approaches to environmental challenges. In the fall, we'll have a whole session on sustainable, attainable, affordable housing. There's lots of adjectives for housing out there, but we know it's probably one of our greatest pressing needs. And in November, we'll have a session on connecting innovative towns and innovation districts. We couldn't do anything on our own. The Institute believes in collaboration, not only to get some amazing diverse viewpoints, but also to get those breakthrough innovations created together. So we wanted to let you know that we are very grateful to have lead partners with us in this series. So far, the municipality of Meaford and the town of Blue Mountains, and our supporting partners, the Center for Business and the cooperators. And we are looking for more partners along the way. So feel free to get in touch with us on our website if you would like to get more information on how you can partner. We heard in February about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and how Collingwood hosted a very important event last fall called the UN Habitat and Towns Collingwood World Summit. And what you see on your screen is a collection of 17 interconnected goals that Canada and 192 other United Nations countries signed on to in 2015. Together, we have a deadline of 2030 to achieve the milestones that are within these goals. So we thought that this series could help us accelerate progress on those. The goals for this event in particular is to really build social capital across the region. Not only for the chief administration officers in our municipalities, but also for all of us participating. How do we get to know each other better? How do we build our knowledge together and learn together? And how do we think about regional sustainability planning for our communities and the benefits of collaboration towards sustainability? Our design team has also been learning a lot about integrated community sustainability planning as part of our own learning journey, which we want to share bits and pieces with you along the way through this series. We'll be hearing more about that from our CAO speakers. And we'd also like to launch discussions about the potential for regional pilot projects. As part of Collingwood World Summit last year, there was a resolution where 10 pilot projects were written about, and we'd like to learn more about how we can work together on developing what those pilot projects might be. So if you're all ready, I thought that we could just have a little bit of an insight into what the definition is on integrated community sustainability planning. Here it is. It's as much a process as it is a plan or a document. It emphasizes long-term thinking, collaboration not only between departments, but between other partners, between sectors, engaging community stakeholders, creating those important partnerships, and continuous monitoring and evaluation. So now I'd like to turn it over to co-host Brandon Houston to introduce our speakers for today.
Thanks, Roz. Sorry, just forgot to unmute myself for a second there. So I wanted to take a quick second just to introduce the four speakers that we have. We've got Rob Armstrong, the CAO of the municipality of Meaford. We have Sean Everett, the CAO of the town of the Blue Mountains, Sonia Skinner, the CAO of the town of Collingwood, and George Vadimbancourt, the CAO of the town of Wasaga Beach. So we've invited these four wonderful CAOs today to talk about the pressing issues that they're facing in their respective communities and the opportunities that exist for collaboration and innovation. We posed 3 questions to them in advance of today and are providing them each with a few minutes just to offer their perspectives on those questions. And the questions that we asked them were, what is the most pressing issue that you face when thinking about sustainability in your municipality? Are these issues where you see alignment and the value of collaboration between municipalities? And are you actively thinking about innovative approaches to important issues that you have seen in other communities? And that's a lot to cover in a few short minutes, but the goal here is really just to get the conversation started and possibly spark some ideas or raise other questions from the community. So we'll start with Rob. Rob Armstrong is the CAO of the municipality of Meaford, and he's been working and living in the Southern Georgian Bay region since 1987. He's currently the CAO and Director of Development Services for Meaford, a position he's held since 2018. He's worked for Meaford since 2009 as the Director of Development Services prior to assuming the CAO role. Prior to moving to Meaford, he'd had a short stint as a planning consultant working out of Collingwood after leaving the town of the Blue Mountains after 20 years, where his last position was as manager of development planning. Rob is a registered professional planner with the Ontario Professional Planners Institute and a member of the Canadian Institute of Planners. He's also a director of OPPI from 2009 to 2013, representing the Lakelands District. And as a part of his role, he went through the district, speaking on behalf of Healthy Communities initiatives of the Institute. Rob is extremely passionate with regards to ensuring sustainable development with the municipality by working with the staff, team, council, and the community in making this happen. So Rob, I'll turn it over to you now.
Thank you, Brandon, and thank you to the Institute for inviting me to participate in this session. I'm glad to be part of this. With regard, the first pressing issue is it's not going to be new to my other 3 CAOs on this, but it is new to Meaford, and that is the what I term to be the tsunami of development. Our community is now asking us as staff and myself, are we ready for this development that's about to hit us? Developers have gone from tire kickers to firm and go mode in the municipality of Meaford. We always knew it was coming. I was asked by a developer this past weekend if we believe it's COVID refugees, and I would respond that I don't think so. This started more than a year before the pandemic was declared, so we knew this was coming, and it's just even heightened even further. We currently have a great basis for this development. We have a really strong institutional with our new library, a new school that's being built, great culture with Meaford Hall and that aspect. We've done a bunch of master plans for our parks, but there's a lot that we still need to do. And this is being highlighted through our community well-being plan that we're undertaking in the municipality. We also have aging infrastructure, specifically in the sewage side, that to be able to handle the development, and we have to properly plan for that. A transportation master plan is underway to guide our transportation, in particular looking at our active transportation in the community. Lastly, the biggest thing that we're about to undertake is our official plan update to properly guide this development. We did an official plan. We meant to start this official plan update last March. However, we had to put a stop on that because we were concerned about doing properly engagement through COVID and the restrictions. Some of the review topics that are critical to us is our downtown visioning. As we get a lot of intensification projects in the downtown, we realize that we have to look at both the heritage aspects of our downtown, the building massing, and possibly development of the public realm, which is also very important to us. With regard to housing, density of development is critical in intensification, height, urban design, and also dealing with the NIMBYism aspects as projects come forward. We need to manage growth from priority areas, and this will be done through the sustainability lens. The climate action plan that's in place, the county's doing, will be formed part of it. Our agricultural and rural area, which is very much an aspect of our area. It's our #1 employer. We have to consider that in the development of that and that. And then sustainability. MEFORD defines sustainability as satisfying our present needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. 2014 sustainability plan, which we did, used the adaptive management approach, and we did build a lot of those policies within our official plan. We expect significant community involvement this time around, and we are going to be looking to some very innovative approaches to engage that. Some of the things that we as staff have found very beneficial is small kitchen table discussions with groups. We feel that it's much more advantageous to pull it out through that process. We basically call it the distributed consultation model that some places in the States use, and that's one of the ones we'll be looking as we develop our plan in doing that. We'll realize we've got COVID constraints to deal with as we move forward in that communication. We've just done a communication strategy, or just about to finalize that, which will guide it, and also look at those innovative methods. I think it'll be led through myself as a champion of sustainability, as well as through council, but also with the support of our manager of development, who will be working with their strategic initiative manager in really doing a lot of consultation and getting out there and doing that process. So I think that brings me to the 3 minutes probably. So.
That's perfect. Thanks, Sean. Nope, you were right on. Or thanks, Rob. You were right on. I'm going to move along now over to Sean Everett, who is the CAO of the town of the Blue Mountains. Sean has worked in the public sector and specifically within the municipal field in a range of capacities for 35 plus years. He's been with the town of the Blue Mountains since 1993, where he took his initial position as arena manager. And since 2017, he's held the positions of acting chief administrative officer, interim chief administrative officer, and was appointed as chief administrative officer in June of 2019. Previously, he was the director of community services for 8 years. His experiences as chief administrative officer have ranged from building a strong senior management team to working with his entire team to develop processes that develop and maintain early and often public and stakeholder consultation, while still managing the impacts of a quickly growing community and maintaining the needs and wants of the range of communities within the community where he lives with his wife and his 2 children. So Sean, I'll pass that over to you now.
Thank you very much, Brandon. And again, similar to Rob, I want to thank the Institute. I think these are awesome opportunities for CAOs and staff to have the discussion with the stakeholders, and really important that it's on a regional basis. I think that's one of the biggest I think benefits when we have these sort of discussions. For the town of Blue Mountains, when I was asked about what our 3 biggest pressing issues were or are, I would have to say us focusing on our and enhancing our communications and community engagement. We've got a very active community communications committee. Our corporate strategic plan that was approved in 2020 really focused on 2 philosophies, one being early and often communication, and then the other one The other philosophy that we're focusing on is actually plan to execute. Those are things that we saw over the last number of years. We needed to enhance, especially when it comes to providing a sustainable community, having plans in place where we've done really good communication up front, and it really eliminates, I believe it will eliminate the roadblocks that we find as the community comes forward and says, well, we didn't know we were going to do a project like that. So when did you decide? So that early and often communication, we are absolutely committed to enhancing that. I think over the last 3 or 4 years, we've done a good job. I think that will always be an aspect of our community that we really need to focus on, whether or not we're using new technology and understanding who needs to be communicated with, when they need to be communicated with, and really focusing on a philosophy there again, as you know, every voice needs to be heard. We are a community of communities, and that's an area that probably I'd have to say is one of our biggest pressing issues. The second one, and we are actively working on, again we have a very strong Blue Mountain Attainable Housing Corporation. Over the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of activity. The corporation made a presentation on yesterday, making their ask. We're focusing on a really exciting opportunity. The town a few years ago purchased the former food land with the intent of that site being a potential site for an attainable housing project. Where a lot of great work has been done on that project. I think it's going to be a real staple for our community, and very similar to Rob. You know, we hear a lot about the attainable housing. I tend to think that rather than calling it attainable housing, it's just increasing the stock and range of accommodations. You know, attainable housing sometimes has a stigma to it, which is very unfair and unfortunate. So we're not talking about affordable housing. We're not talking about attainable housing. I really think there's a need regionally to consider it as an increase of stock and range of a type of housing. For a community to be sustainable, we have to be able to provide those opportunities. The last one is the community sustainability. I think the Blue Mountains future story is something that we're going to be extremely proud of. I know we're actively working on that project. Very successful survey to have 250 surveys completed to date, which closed, I believe, at the end of February. We're just getting to the point of this plan process by April of 2021, and next phase being April 2021 into September of 2021, which is really developing the vision of the future of the community, and then our final phase being the finalizing the community sustainability plan. We're looking at between October 21 to January 2022. So again, huge amount of public engagement is required. For us, a survey of 250 is good. I know there's been a ton of emphasis put into making sure that the community is engaged. And I think that's, again, I can't stress enough that everything that we are doing right now is really trying to enhance that community engagement. Some people say we're unique. I don't think we're that unique. I think we just need to figure out how people want to be communicated with, and try to make that proactive connection as early and often as we possibly can. So overall, I think regionally, this is such a good news story that you have, 4 CAOs on a panel. And now it's up to us to continue that momentum. And again, I can't stress enough how important that is, that Mayor Sanderson has put that request out for the Southern Georgian Bay region, the mayors and the CAOs to get together to formally create a group. I think that's a huge step in the right direction that this region, I think, will flourish from, and really allow us to knock down some perceived municipal and county borders. So with that, I'm hoping I stayed within my 3 minutes, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
Great, thank you, Sean. So we'll move on next to Sonia Skinner, the CAO of the town of Collingwood. Sonia has been with the town of Collingwood since mid-2019 and has been the CAO since April of 2020. Across a broad career Spanning civil engineering, IT, and more, she sought to build relationships, listen openly, and ensure staff have the confidence to think innovatively and give their opinions. She also takes pride in providing thoughtful and unbiased advice. Now, prior to Collingwood, Sonia was the Chief Administrative Officer of the Grey Soluble Conservation Authority for 3 years, and she graduated in engineering from Carleton University and has a master's in engineering from Queen's University. Her varied career also includes leading alternative service delivery options, asset management, and maintenance for highway and bridges worth over $54 billion, and an annual construction procurement and administration worth about $3 billion. Delivering business analytics and data warehousing for 5 ministries and information technology standards for the Ontario government, and directing regulatory compliance modernization for the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change. Sonia grew up in Newfoundland and Labrador, the daughter of a wildlife biologist and a dietitian in a family that enjoyed outdoor activities, including fly fishing, orienteering, and cross-country skiing. So Sonia, take it away.
Thanks, Brandon. All that makes me want to go outside and do something fun. And the weather's pretty nice for it. I'm really, really pleased to be here today. I see a lot of familiar names and people with amazing knowledge as I scroll through the names, and I'm so excited to meet more of them in person. I took some liberty with the questions, but hopefully I'll get back to, eventually within my 3 minutes to the ones that you asked me to answer. But first I wanted to talk about the roots of a vibrant and sustainable community. And to me, the thing that precedes vibrance and sustainability is dialogue. It's the community connection, it's the inclusion, it's the events like that are happening right this very minute. Because you have to find a way to move to vibrancy and sustainability together. So this is just an amazing thing to be involved with. And part 2 is sort of, why am I scared? And as a CAO in Collingwood, in many ways, we're very comfortable with process. And there's so many good ideas here. I've already heard and seen in the chat these, big ideas of what we could be, what we need to be, how we need to work differently. And but then I could put my CAO hat on and I think, oh, what if they're not feasible? What if I don't have enough resources by myself? What if some are feasible, but we can't do them all at once, but people expect us to do them at once? And so there's a loss of control there. And then I might have to rely on others to do the work. And that might mean some of you right here on the line today. Or maybe Rob Armstrong might be doing some work that is going to help Collingwood. So I have to get over that, what you say, if your goal's not exciting enough to scare you, then maybe you haven't thought big enough. So I'm scared to start this conversation, but in a really good way. And I think that the South Georgian Bay Challenge, and especially because we have so many engaged people here, is to marry public and private contributions. So in my 38 seconds that I have left, I better turn my, anyway, that'll go off. We want to build a bridge that's going to provide a way for us to continue these types of dialogues. And so what I need from folks is that there are good ideas and lots of them. And that between the other CAOs and even more importantly, the people who are here having this conversation, that you're willing to find the best ideas and willing to do some work to synthesize them or put them together so that we can move them more quickly forward. Because I don't think it's anymore that government does all the reading and the thinking. We're all in this together. So we need help from everybody. And begging as a municipal staff person is some time to evaluate and set up decisions so that we can find a way to align councils. And there's just a pile of things that I want to talk over with, I'm hoping people will bring up today, and I've seen a few in the chats. And as I sign off, I'll just mention a few of them. Transportation network analysis, safety analysis, and play-friendly streets, transit, including accessible transit. And we have a study underway on that in Collingwood, inclusion and diversity and how we move it further into our municipalities, tourism, housing, including the increase of stock and the range of stocks. Sean Everett, I'm going to use that language going forward. Thank you. Drinking water and wastewater treatment and how to do that better. A natural heritage green space corridors and linkages, including our trails and water access for all. Economic development, such as the Business Development Center and the new business accelerator that will be getting underway in Collingwood. Arts and culture, and we have an art feasibility study underway. Even collaboration on policing and community safety and well-being that hopefully will keep people away from policing if their real issues are not criminal in nature, but more about their needs within the community and their supports. Shared internal services that might make some of things like legal advice or even specialties like climate change advice more a shared resource between multiple municipalities. And even things like figuring out how to work together to leverage grants and grant applications. So those are a few things I thought that this group, might want to make suggestions on. And I really appreciate the opportunity to say a few words and be invited. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sonia. And finally, we've got George Badaboncourt, the CAO of the town of Wasaga Beach. George has over 37 years of municipal experience, the last 25 years as CAO, 15 years of that with the town of Wasaga. George graduated from the University of Waterloo in land use planning and the University of Western Ontario with a master's in public administration. He's a professional land use planner, and over the years, George has been engaged in a number of volunteer leadership roles in the hospital and nonprofit sectors, giving back to the community. He was elected 2 years ago as a part-time counselor in his home community of Penetangwisheen and continues to serve as the president of his local youth basketball organization, a position that he has now held for 15 years. So I'll hand it over to you now, George.
Thank you, Brandon, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I want to thank Rosalind for the invitation. I'm going to take a slightly different approach to our conversation today. I want to talk a little bit about what I view as being the fundamentals for success in anything that we want to do. And a few of our speakers have already touched on this, and that's the importance of civic engagement. In my opinion, for local democracy to be successful, more people need to participate in the decisions made by their local government. For many years, I've noticed the decline in civic engagement. One indicator is voter turnout. In the last municipal election, voter turnout in our area ranged from a low of 39.6% to a high of 47.5%. The people elected to represent us work hard, but they can't absorb everything that's important to a community. Members of council deal with a host of issues and need input from local citizens on the issues that are important to them. How do we increase that input? Well, I have some suggestions. First, we need to explain the benefits of becoming engaged and the opportunities for engagement, and then promote the heck out of it. There are many technologies available today that provide opportunities to engage. Online engagement platforms, virtual meetings, doodle polls, the list is endless. Second, we need to educate people on how to get engaged in a beneficial manner. Over the last few years, I've noticed a trend toward negative and critical input instead of constructive and respectful comments. There are ways that people can get their points across without being nasty. Third, we need to speak to young adults and inspire them on what it means to be a good citizen and how valuable their contribution can be. Once they learn the fundamentals of civic engagement, they will have the confidence to get involved. Finally, we need to better educate our high school students on the importance of civic engagement in their local communities. Do you know that there's a grade 10 high school course called Civics that is required by all students to graduate? The course covers the rights and responsibilities associated with being an active citizen in a democratic society. It explores issues of civic importance, such as healthy schools, community planning, environmental responsibility, and the influence of social media, while developing an understanding of the role of civic engagement and political processes in the local community. It teaches political thinking concepts and the political inquiry process to investigate and express informed opinions about significant political issues and local developments. In my opinion, this course should be made a full credit course, and classroom teaching should be supplemented with prominent people from the community offering real life political and civic engagement experiences. In closing, the point I've tried to convey this afternoon is that we need to encourage greater civic engagement to shape our communities. Local government leaders and community-minded people cannot affect change on their own. They need positive and constructive citizen input. Educating high school students and local community members on how to get engaged will build awareness on the issues facing our community. Perhaps then we will see an increase in the voter turnout for the upcoming provincial and municipal elections in 2022. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, George. We're going to open it up. We're going to start with a few questions here. I have a few that I wanted to ask, but I think I want to start with the civic engagement piece because we ended with that, and you spoke very passionately about that. So I was just wondering if maybe you could expand a little bit more on that now that we have a little more time, and if any of the others want to chime in afterwards, I would love to hear other input. So George, when you're talking about getting more civic engagement, especially with the youth, and speaking to them about the benefits and the importance of it, what would be the benefits that you convey to youth in getting engaged with the municipality?
I think with the youth, you have to find projects and things that they're passionate about. So it might be a skateboard park, it might be a basketball court, it might be a twin pad arena, and going to them and asking for their input on these particular projects, so that they feel like they're engaged. They have associations, whether it's the Minor Hockey Association or the Figure Skating Association, and so there are youth involved in these associations that we can go to and ask them to be engaged. And you might have 200 kids involved in a program. You might get 7 or 8 or 12 that might be interested in participating. And that's the way I think you start to build community engagement with the youth.
And what would be the easiest way for not just youth, but anybody in the public to engage with the municipality? I think that might be one of the hurdles is maybe the public just doesn't know what the process is. What would that process be to engage, say, your municipality?
Well, my reference technology, and we put a platform on our website. It's called Let's Talk Wasaga Beach, and we put topics on that our website, and we ask people to share their views on various subjects. It's just now a matter of promoting that and making sure that there's more awareness of these opportunities to be engaged in that. Now that's only one aspect, and certainly with the pandemic, it's been difficult to have face-to-face public meetings and those kind of things. But having technology available, I think, is a great asset.
And I would add to that, George, and thanks, Brandon, that a couple of people have mentioned the future story, and Sean, you mentioned it in your remarks. That engagement structure I found to be really fascinating, being a resident of the Blue Mountains, and data played a big role in the conversation that took place amongst residents within that tech platform. So Sean, maybe you could share with us a few more details about that process and how you may or may not have had success engaging the next generation or youth participants.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rosalind. And I think a lot of it is, generally looking at opportunities on trying different ways to communicate and finding out how individuals want to be communicated with. I think that's the biggest thing, and I think that's, you know, the future story, and the way that they've moved forward, where they've come up with something new, and they've done a great job of engaging. But like to George's point, like I think every opportunity that we can look at, we need to be creative and innovative as a municipality. And what I've asked our staff to do is when you are looking at moving forward with a project or coming forward with a report, think about yourself as a resident and how you would want to have an opportunity to understand what that recommendation, what that plan is going to do. And again, to George's point, like to me, engaging the youth into a subject matter like the future story, a sustainability plan. I think in trying to engage the youth to see how they could be involved in an official plan process. I think I look at the official plan as being something that, you know, it builds your community. It really outlines what the community wants our community to be. Those are those key elements, those key plans that, from a staff perspective, we use as guiding documents, because that is what we believe that the community has said through consultation that they want. So I think having that range, having the willingness to try different methods of communication, and also understanding one size doesn't fit all. We really have to provide a range of tools for communication, but we have to be, we as a municipality have to be listening. And when we're listening, you know, recommendations, we all know sometimes recommendations aren't going to be favorable, maybe because of policy, but we have to at least identify what we heard and provide some rationale of why we're moving forward with a recommendation. Hopefully that helps.
That's great. It sounds like public engagement, in fact, is key to sparking innovation towards sustainability. I'll throw a question out to the whole panel, and then we'll check in with Marilyn to see if there's a very active chat going on. But that question to the entire panel, and maybe we can hear from Sonia on this to kick things off, is using the Sustainable Development Goals as a framework. I mean, is there advantage to using that framework, and how might we go about that?
I think that there is. Thanks for that question, Roz. The one thing I think that you asked earlier tonight, or mentioned as one of the questions for the CAOs, or the questions that are being answered by this entire series, is sort of, you know, what is a vibrant and sustainable community? And so many people have had those types of discussions over the years. And I think the Sustainable Development Goals ultimately are a pretty mature snapshot of what builds a vibrant and sustainable community. And they sort of come with a built-in set of tools where people have described what each of them means. And so I think that they are, and there's papers written on each of them that we can use as jumping boards to get off into even more in-depth reviews of them. So I do think that they're a great place to start. And I'm really looking forward to some of our subsequent conversations that the Institute of South Georgian Bay will be hosting around how to measure how we're doing, because I think that's where the Sustainable Development Goals will really shine. People have started already to think about, how do we know if we're achieving them?
Great. Thanks, Sonia. And Rob, you spoke about a really important point about Meaford in particular, but obviously some of the other jurisdictions are in the nexus of where rural meets urban, and the Sustainable Development Goals framework or other frameworks that you might know of could help us have that important conversation about that nexus. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I think it's very important. One of the key things when we go out and want to do our public engagement is have some very grounded discussion at the beginning on why we're doing, or why something's happening and the reason it's happening. And I think the sustainability framework is that research and that background in leading that discussion. And what we've learned with a very recent project is when you have that discussion, then there's an understanding, and the mutual end goal is much more reachable in doing that when people have that understanding and doing that. That both applies within the urban area and also out in the rural and the agricultural area. We have to protect those areas. And if they understand the reasons why we're doing that, to produce food and that, and we don't want to destroy that, then they start to understand that rationale, and they can do that out in the rural area just as much as in the urban area.
Great, thanks, Rob. Marilyn, over to you. What's happening in the chat? And you're on mute.
Yeah, there we go. Lots of thinking in the chat. There's three main themes that I'm reading. I've got them all nicely color-coded here. A lot of concern for the environment and really a desire for more active engagement with erosion control, says Cheryl Evans, manage shoreline erosion and degradation. Education, so that both community members and people visiting have a better idea of how to protect our environment. Connecting existing communities, says Kate Russell, with plans for future development, really visioning how our community should look and protecting what's green. So probably the largest segment of comments that I'm reading are concern for the environment, and closely behind that and often connected is the idea of housing, that there needs to be affordable housing, attainable housing, but there, and as Sandy Trillo says, a greater diversity of housing options all around that connect with transportation, but also concern that housing be greener, whether it's new housing or housing that it should be retrofit in some way, but really a big concern there. And then the third issue is really picking up on the idea that you introduced, Roz, of integrated sustainability planning, that we're actually planning for sustainability. And in that, there's a very nice comment from Jarvis Strong suggesting more and deeper partnerships between municipalities as well as organizations that serve really the whole region, that we can't address housing or transportation or climate change one by each. Lots of check in with you later, lots of feedback on participation in planning in municipalities.
That's great. Brandon, over to you.
Yeah, the one of the questions that I had was actually in jumping into that collaborative piece from the regional perspective, and I'd like to hear a little bit from maybe each of the CAOs, and you know, what do you see as the best next step towards the communities all working collaboratively together? I know there have been some efforts to date, but going forward from a sustainability standpoint, and the pilot projects and other initiatives that you're looking at, what are the next steps to ensure that this collaborative works well together? Who would like to go first? Maybe I'll throw it over to Sonia first.
I've been thinking about this one a lot, Brandon, because I do find, as I mentioned, you know, the scary opportunity of us all working within and beyond the government, okay, so I think the next things, this type of community engagement where there's some agreement on the priorities that are broadly supported and held by, for example, everyone calling in today, I think is very important, because it talks to councils and the folks will be there to respond to the engaged Collingwood or the Wasaga Beach or the Town of Blue Mountains future vision. So broad community engagement. I think, as Sean mentioned, the CAOs and mayors group that's starting will also reinforce that, because they'll hear what's being said in this community group and then also bring their own thoughts to the forefront. And I think that there's a nexus or intersection where there's several issues that are on both plates that probably are going to be the ones that have legs. And then we can work together to figure out who else needs to be engaged. What kind of money do we need? Do we need a grant? And I think that's somewhere where the CAOs can be helpful. We really are public servants, and trying to figure out a path, that gets multiple councils or other stakeholders on board. We could be a part of that solution with folks like yourselves in this group. Thank you.
Great, thank you. George, how about yourself? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, and I think Sonia's on to something there. And I would only add that with respect to the various municipalities, we have municipal boundaries, but they're basically just legal boundaries. We're one large community. We share shoreline, we share hospital services, we share a number of things. And from a policy standpoint, when we're developing policies, there is some thought that they should be consistent across all the municipalities, some degree of consistency, especially in the official plan. And as I heard, from my colleagues here, is that municipalities, including Wasaga Beach, are in the process of updating their official plans. So some of these policies with respect to sustainability, shoreline erosion, other themes that cross municipal boundaries, there should be some consistency in these policies so that, we're not too far off each other in terms of how we see these issues being addressed going forward. So from a practical standpoint, if our planning staff could get together and have conversations during the development phase of these new official plans, I think that there's an opportunity there to apply some consistency across our region with respect to some of these important policy issues.
Right. Sean or Rob, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I'll take a swing at this, where I just think, this whole regional aspect, it is such a long time coming. We've talked about it long enough. I know at the last session that we had, I went on a bit of a spiel about regional, and I do think, I think it's prime. I think we're ready to do this. And we need to celebrate where we are collaborating. I think equally as much as the municipalities, maybe internally, the public needs to celebrate that, the municipalities can work together. The efficiencies, I think, would blow our minds. I think, and I just, to George's point again, when we talk about official plans, when we talk about transportation master plans, like, for me, the mayors and the CAOs, we can be the champions, and it's our responsibility as CAOs to make sure that, our message goes throughout the corporation of what our expectations are. I can tell you my expectation, and I think I share it with the other panelists. Our expectations is we should always be looking regional, for a number of reasons, but it really is time to start really moving towards that. I think from a Blue Mountains Collingwood perspective, the biggest win that we've seen that's obvious is the transit. And yes, it's a small transit system, but they were focused on a partnership originally of 750 riders per month. And, pre-COVID, we were at about 2,700 riders a month. So that's a huge win. We broke down the boundaries, and yes, it is a small transit system, but it is a win. And those are the things that we need to celebrate, not just get into the focus of, well, it's only a certain area. If we can take that win and move it on, then that's a huge benefit. So yeah, regional is the way we need to really move.
Great. Rob, anything to add to that last?
Yeah, I think a lot of has been said, but I would, interesting that we had a discussion at the Grey County CAO, is another group that gets together and talks about, because we all have interest over there. And one of the things they talked about as we work through our climate change action plan, it's very important that if recommendations come forward there, that we all have to implement those same. Otherwise, it can pit one community against the other. So I think there's another example of that issue of if we look at something and we have to coordinate it, because it fails if it doesn't do that. And I really support the discussions about us advancing that. We've had significant discussions with Town of Blue Mountains about partnerships and future opportunities that are available to us, and we'll continue doing that. And I see that being expanded and doing that for sure. So we always have to, a lot of our constraints, especially when we get into planning, are driven by the upper tier a bit. So we may have to engage them a bit and adapting their policies that would apply to us at the lower tiers as we move forward. So
great. I just happened to notice a question that popped up in the chat that tied into this, so I thought I'd bring it up. Duncan had asked, do you think by working together, we'll be more successful in pushing back against potential provincial government MZOs, which may threaten our natural heritage features like wetlands? I think that's a great question. I think as a region, we become more powerful versus working independently. Does anybody have any thoughts on that? Sonia, anything would you like to add to that?
Thank you. I could be mistaken, but I think for an MZO, you need the municipality to request it. So I think potentially, working together to figure out our future vision that might involve continuing to keep our natural heritage areas and wetlands and find, alternative ways to support the economy that are a little easier on the environment probably would be steps in the right direction. And I know there's a couple planners in the crowd who could correct me, but I think that it does start, and Rob is laughing, so he knows the answer to that for sure. But that's my thinking, actually, that we need ways to support the economy that don't involve paving paradise to put in the parking lot.
mm-hmm. Yeah, just to expand on that, our official plan currently now says that we have an environment first policy. So for us to request a minister's zoning order or an order that would be detrimental to that environment first policy, I can't see our municipality doing that. So it follows along that same lines as a professional planner. I don't know if I could support my team putting that forward, so for sure.
Mm-hmm. We heard about the importance of celebrating success and building on smallish pilot projects like transportation across municipalities. With the integrated community sustainability planning process, could any of you share another example of success through that process, which has led to a pilot and the potential for scaling?
I think I'll take a little bit of a swing at this, and to me, it's more around the active transportation where, I go back to the early, I guess it was the late 80s, when one of those regional projects that just made such a good news story, and still today does, is the Georgian Trail, where it's active transportation at its finest. It's a major corridor, and that was done through a tri-party agreement between the three municipalities, actually four municipalities at the time, because it was Collingwood Township as well as the town of Thornbury. So these ideas are long standing, where you get 33 kilometers of trail with four municipalities, now three municipalities sharing it. Like, to me, that is a great collaboration that continues today and worked in, I believe it was 88. So the footprint is there. Again, the transit system, I think, is a great example, but I can't stress enough. And the ICSPs, having that relation back and forth to other municipalities, to Rob's point, where we're at the Grey County CAOs, where we've talked about that collaboration. Yeah, it's important that Grey County, shares those same sort of ideas amongst the county. For us in Grey, it's equally important that we still reflect what the Southern Georgian Bay looks like and what's important there. So I think there are some good examples. It's just, again, we don't celebrate them enough, so you have to go into the memory banks to find them.
Can anyone else share a success story example? Sonia.
I think that the Business Development Center in Collingwood is a good example, because there's the Collingwood, Town of Blue Blue Mountain, I think Wasaga, George can tell me if I'm wrong. Anyway, with the federal government through the Center for Economic and Business Development, and the provincial government through SBEX, Small Business Enterprise Center provides services to businesses from anywhere across South Georgian Bay. You don't need to be from Collingwood to get an appointment there and to avail oneself of the services. So I think that, that's a bit of a, I think it's a big success story, and it probably was scary for folks to put their funding into the first time when they were still attracting partners. And it's the kind of tool that we need to transform our economy, into new and different things, and to help grow and to bring together communities of folks. And I know Brandon's very active, Houston's a very active participant, along with potentially a couple other names on the call here of promoting and supporting, and I hope at some point availing of some of those services. Thank you.
One of the things I'd like to talk about is just the secondary suites program that we've got in place here in Wasaga Beach, and it's been around now for a few years, where individuals in a home that's suitable, it has to be suitable, can convert part of the home into a secondary suite where in-laws can live, or they could rent it out in order to provide a little bit of income to help support expenses. And it's a neat way to provide additional attainable housing. It has to be the right fit. It has to be, in the right situation. It can't be happen in really dense neighborhoods. But I think it's something where it allows people to age at home, to have a supplementary income, or even a conversion where, a young family allows parents to actually move in with them into a secondary suite and, finish, spend their time close to their grandkids and whatnot. So it's something I think, I think it's a success. I think the province certainly has recognized it and is certainly advocating, and I think they offer grants for that kind of thing. But it's one of those things that you don't see happening very often. It's just one of those little success stories that needs to be shouted about.
Well, those are great examples of success stories. Marilyn, what are you seeing in the chat?
Some interesting thoughts, picking up really on George's point about voting and as voting and engagement, and wondering if a different voting system would help. Sonia jumps on the chat and makes really, I think, an important comment about cynicism and mistrust, and really that building the actual community relationships and connections is key there, so that people have personal contacts with staff in the municipalities. It really is a community conversation. There's a longing back to the Vision 2020 project, which a number of people were involved in. And I think we've heard about that in each of the Institute sessions. And it might be worth having a little look at that process and see how we can modify it so that it works again here in our communities. Kate Russell makes an interesting point that regional projects, not single tier, so that we don't lose our authenticity as communities. We're not all blurred together as one. And Julie then sort of makes a point that's connected to that, saying that there's so much development going on now that it really could be an opportunity to review how we go about a single view or a more united view regionally. And then there's a whole lot of comments from people who said, yes, my voice was heard. It felt good. I got a chance to see what other people thought. For Pamela Spence, a different opinion. It was frustrating, formal, but she's hoping it's changing. Kate Russell felt included. So quite a diversity of experience in people's engagement.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering if any of the CAOs can offer us, now that we've talked about potential successes and feel good about those, what are the barriers when engagement is in fact successful and you produce something like Vision 2020 and perhaps other sustainability plans over the last 20 years have been developed, but they don't seem to go anywhere. So in 1, 2, or 3 words, perhaps the CAOs can tell us, all of us, what we need to be thinking about as we think about refreshing some of those really good ideas.
I can start with that. One of the big things that I can see as the challenge is that ultimate resistance to change. There's a lot, sometimes people don't want to see anything change. And it's obviously when you're trying to do something new, it is a change, and there's that resistance. So it's how to harness that and deal with that issue.
I think that these plans have to be incorporated into formal municipal documents. So one of the strong documents is the official plan. So there needs to be a policy framework within the official plan. It needs to make its way into the municipality's strategic plan as a goal, then with some action items that council has identified as something it wants to achieve within its term or into, you know, an eight-year time frame. And any of the financial aspects have to find their way into the budget. So the town's capital budget, you have an annual capital budget, you have a 4-year forecast, a 10-year forecast. So all these documents have to work together in order to move an item forward, keep it on the radar, so that people are actioning what needs to be done to achieve the goal.
I would just chime in to say that all of the secondary plans have to be supported through the official plan, because that is the ultimate guiding document. The other piece, and being from the Blue Mountains and us having the sustainable path that was done, which was a 50-year ICSP plan for the town of Blue Mountains. As a staff person who was in community services at the time, that a lot of those projects were identified through the sustainable path. From a staff perspective, probably the most frustrating piece was it was a very high level document. It was hard to interpret what was actually meant. And to George's point, it has to have a dollar. At the end of the day, unfortunately, a lot of the times it comes down to, can you afford to do it? And I think it's really important that as early as possible, you can put some sort of a financial piece towards these plans so you can actually do them. Or else you're going to end up with these plans that are very motherhoody, that when you go to actually implement them, it becomes a big challenge from a staff perspective. And then the challenge is back from the public saying, well, you approved the plan, why aren't you implementing it? So those are two areas that I think out of my experience, I would say are some things to consider.
Well, before I turn it over to Brandon, I just want to say that can we afford to do it is perhaps a 20th century question. And perhaps the question is, what do we want to do? Because as a longtime person involved in philanthropy, fundraising, and all those great things, content first, money second. And I hope that everyone will continue to join these gatherings, because we want to actually have big discussions on new financial tools and mechanisms that are already being piloted and used in other jurisdictions that can help us achieve some of these visionary things. Over to you, Brandon.
I noticed that Sonia had unmuted her mic, and I wanted to just give her a moment to see if she had something that she wanted to add to that last point.
In a nutshell, I had two very small things. One is I like the saying, what is it, 2 in the hand versus 3 in the bush. Focus is very important, and in public service, it's really easy to say yes without, having, delivered, the ability to truly deliver. And then I have a little bit of part of a solution to that, and that was harnessing the ability of the public to support things that local governments might be doing. And I think we've got to find ways to do that better together, because on the one hand, we just had 2 views on money, but I find I can often figure out a way to get the money, but I got to figure out what to do. And that's where a broad base of people like that are on this call today, who understand what needs to be done in the community, We can't always get the money, but it's easier to get the money for something that everybody loves, that's well-defined, that council's bought into. And that's leveraging groups like this to do it. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Sonia. And just one quick follow-up to that. So taking that approach, if there are people that have those ideas, then how do we move forward to get those done? What recommendations would you have to say, okay, here's the process now? What would be that roadmap?
I think that there's a few things that will coalesce. George mentioned how his municipality has a website. Collingwood does too. It's called Engage Collingwood. And we have ways to provide input directly to staff. So that, largely on what council would like to hear about. And as well, council members their job is to interact with the community. You can always talk to your council member and they collect information as well. But we did have a conversation a little earlier in this talk about how a group like this, bringing forward 1 or 2 or 3 really key priorities within the community, can also have a much louder voice than a single person. So those are, 3 potential immediate options for providing input. Thank you.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. Well, I think this is a good spot to start to wrap things up. Thank you all for your time. What we wanted to end this off with was just giving each of you a few moments to what we'll call famous last words, which hopefully aren't your famous last words, but we'll call them that. And the question that we want to give you a moment just to answer is, what should we be thinking about over the next 5 years? So Rob, I'll start with you.
Yeah, what we should be thinking about for the next 5 years. So I think this area is just going to get busier, and it's really protecting what we have and working together to protect what we have. We heard it locally with regard to some recent developments, and I think for us, we're going to be looking to some experience of our neighbors on how they dealt with those same problems that we anticipate we'll be getting in Meaford. So it's, for me, I'm going to be looking to my neighbors to work together and understand that for sure.
Fantastic. Sean, how about yourself?
I think over the next 5 years, obviously, I think increasing that stock and range of accommodations, I think, is something that's critical. I'll go back to, because I believe that, my point in regards to the communication and community engagement, that's all encompassing. It's everything that we need to be doing, whether it's about development, whether it's about environment, whether it's about sustainability, whether it's about finance, whatever. I think we really need to focus on that over the next 5 years. And then probably the last thing I'll just leave with is, as we look at regional, I really do think it's important, and there are some comments in the chat, really defining and getting that understanding of what each municipality's character is. For the Blue Mountains, I think we have a range of characters. We've got the rural area, we got Craigleith, and we got the Thornbury Clarksburg area. We need to define that character and do everything that we can to maintain it, but still understand regionally, it's okay if we're doing things regionally. To the point in the chat about, having that blurred, I totally agree. I think we all have that need to make sure that we keep our identities, but quite frankly, behind the scenes, celebrating wins, show where those regional opportunities are.
Great. And George, the next 5 years, what insights do you have? What should we be thinking about?
Well, I think we're going to continue to grow at a phenomenal rate. To Rob's point, I think our area is a fantastic area to live and work, and I think it's just going to continue to grow. As new people move into our communities, I think the challenge for us is to make them feel part of our communities and to be engaged, and to eliminate some of that cynicism that they may have accumulated wherever they came from, and ensure that they become part of our communities, that they feel part of our communities, and we have the services to be able to provide to them as they come. I think those will be the challenges that we'll face.
Great. And as somebody who did move here 5 years ago, so relatively new and will be considered a newcomer for quite a while, I imagine, I do have to give credit to this area for how welcoming the community has been. I know I've heard both sides of that story, but my own personal experience has been phenomenal. And Sonia, you're last, and no pressure, but everybody remembers the last words that are spoken. So
I heard of some words a number of years ago, and they actually came from Kim Wingrove, who's now the CAO of Grey County. And she said to me when I was the CAO at Grey Sauble, she said, we have to think about full build out. And basically what that means is if everything that's in the official plan is built, what would our community look like? Every developable inch is developed per, its allowable development. And then what would our community be? And I think that we have to not think just about the next, warehouse or the next housing development, or we need to look at that big picture and say, is that where we want to go? Do we have natural heritage corridors and linkages, and the many things that go with it? And I have to, again, agree with George on the community inclusion and relationships. When I kicked off my piece, I said, you don't get in a vibrant and sustainable community unless you got the people to build it. And community inclusion and relationships are the way to go. And I do like Collingwood's logo, which is people thrive here. I think maybe we could get a little bit more of people in green thrive here, but that also feeds from community inclusion and relationships. So thank you, Brandon, for the almost last word.
I think that was a perfect way to end it. I'm going to pass it back over to Roz now.
Wow, this has been a fabulous discussion. Is it true that that this is the first time you four CAOs have been together in a forum? Together on a panel?
I think in a forum, like in a panel, absolutely.
Yeah. That is the case.
Yeah.
Well, so we're trying to figure out, how can civic engagement groups help other sectors, and how do we engage all sectors to accelerate things? So if we've helped in some way to bring you all together, I think that's a great milestone. And also I want to thank you very much for your open, candid remarks on everything. It's been really insightful. I think what you've done is you've provided us with an agenda for the rest of the series, and perhaps for yourselves as you get together with your mayoral colleagues, because it appears that the housing stock, i.e. the housing continuum and what's required, is probably one of the most pressing issues. We've heard about the environmental challenges, not only the issues within the environment, but also protecting what we love about this area. We've heard about a potential regional youth project. How do we get the next generation engaged? We've talked a little bit about data, but not a lot about the capacity of gathering and analyzing regional data. We've talked about civic engagement and the importance of that. And we've talked about building on small wins in the transportation area. So, we've got a developing agenda that certainly our design team will be paying attention to, and maybe we can continue these conversations to figure out, what is that integrated vision, and therefore start talking about the financial tools and mechanisms that can accelerate progress on those areas. I also want to thank our amazing partners, the municipality of Meaford and the town of Blue Mountains, who were there first as lead partners. I see a lot of other leaders from other municipalities, and I hope that you will join this collective discussion soon with partnership. The supporting partners, the Center for Business, which was mentioned as a real success model in terms of looking at what regional integration can do on some innovation in business, and thank the cooperators for their support. It's very interesting, but as we move towards thinking more about resilience and sustainability, it's interesting that the insurance sector is looking to have solutions on some of these challenges that we're facing as well. So our great thanks to Julia White at the Cooperators. And certainly if you have a company and you'd like to get on board as a supporting partner, we'd love to hear from you. Our next event is on Wednesday, April 14th, and it's all about building the next economy. And perhaps we can think about framing that within the agenda that we've discussed here today. Want to thank the design team for your always diverse ideas, opinions, actions, and how beautifully you work together. Thank you so much for that. Brandon, Marilyn, thank you for facilitating. Have we missed anything? All right, we're wrapping up 7 minutes early, everybody. So enjoy your evening and please mark your calendars for Wednesday, April 14th. Have a good evening.